Kay, good morning. We are in day 19 of our assault against Hamas, our offensive, and our efforts to restore safety and security to the people of southern Israel. Indeed, we are making the necessary preparations in order to appear and not only appear, but also be factually ready for a ground mobilization. Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi said yesterday the army is ready. And I would say we are taking every day in order to be prepared for that mobilization. We know what we are up against: a merciless terrorist organization, a terrorist army that has no problem butchering babies in their bedrooms. And so we need to be prepared as the military that when that mobilization comes, when the green light is given from the government, and when the optimal operational conditions exist on the battleground, we will mobilize with force and distinction and in order to restore that safety and security to the people of Israel.
Are you ready today?
The General, Lieutenant General Halevi said yesterday that we are ready. So I would say there is an ongoing preparedness, and indeed, with every day that goes by, we are getting more information, more intelligence. The tasks for each and individual units, like Deborah Haynes visited, are more clear and more concise. The intelligence that is constantly coming in means that we'll just be better prepared and more ready.
How worried are you about hostages being used as human shields, particularly in the tunnels, the Gaza metro?
I was looking at the footage as you were showing and could not help but seeing the image of 5-year-old Emilia Aloni. Of course, the hostages are a top priority, top priority, and they need to be brought home. We will do everything in our ability to bring them home safely as soon as possible. It is Hamas that are responsible for their well-being now. We have demanded that the International Committee of the Red Cross have access to them. And yes, we need to get them home.
A former top Israeli commander, Major General Mikey Edelstein, former Special Forces guy, I believe. He's back working with the Israeli Defense Force at the moment since the 7/10 attack. He said when he was speaking to journalists at the screening of the Hamas massacre footage that Israel has evidence of Iranian involvement in the 7th of October attack. What can you tell us about that?
Hamas gets from Iran every year $100 million. They don't do anything good for the people with that money. They only build their capabilities, they conduct their training, they develop their research and development industry of the weapons that they are utilizing in order to conduct attacks and lethal terrorist attacks against our people. So Iran are obviously in the background of this event, this tragedy, this massacre of men, women, and children, and the abduction of elderly and children from the age of 9 months. So Iran are obviously a player in this battleground. We've seen their efforts up north to try and divert through Hezbollah our attention from south to north. So there is an Iranian, I would say, invisible hand pulling the strings. We are prepared for that threat, and indeed we are looking into it. I can't confirm what you quoted, a specific instruction regarding 7th of October at this time.
No, as I said, it was mentioned by Major General Mikey Edelstein. He said that there was evidence that Iran had direct involvement with the 7th of October attack, and I'm just wondering what direct evidence is there?
I can't confirm that at this time, I'm afraid.
OK. I wonder if you can talk to me about Israel hitting Syrian army targets overnight. Does that mean that a new front has now opened up?
We see the entire northern front as one large front. Indeed, we had rocket attacks launched from Syria yesterday, and therefore we retaliated and destroyed the source of those attacks against us. As I mentioned, Hezbollah has been aggravating the situation on the northern front with Lebanon. And indeed, there is a concern that the northern front in itself, from Syria all the way across to Lebanon, will increase its hostilities towards Israel, as you pointed out. So, rockets fired from Syria yesterday are a threat. We have no patience for nonsense, and we will deal I would say, damning strikes against those that intend to attack us. We have done against Hezbollah. We will do so against any terrorist element that suggests or believes that while we are operating on the border with Hamas in Gaza, that this would be the right time to try and threaten us or divert our attention elsewhere. It will be very, very bad for them. I think, the attacks Hezbollah have conducted, for instance, from anti-tank guided missiles, rocket launchers, mortar fire, machine gun fire, sniper fire, that is bad for Lebanon. And Lebanon needs to take control of the south of their country in order to prevent Hezbollah launching these attacks to us. And any terrorist organization in the region that is thinking about taking an advantage of the situation needs to look very closely how we are destroying and dismantling Hamas at these days. They need to think very carefully if they want to cross that threshold. Okay.
I wonder if you have a view on comments coming out of the UN overnight in New York.
Said words. IDF operates within the realm of international humanitarian law and the laws of armed conflict. That is our operation. That's we operate based on three core principles: the principle of distinction between civilian and terrorists and non-combatants and terrorists, military necessity. So we are destroying Hamas's capabilities so that they cannot threaten us, cannot jeopardize our forces if and when we mobilize, cannot launch rockets, cannot utilize explosive drones. These are all of the things that we are facing and striking as we speak. And of course, weighing up the proportionality between those two values that are, I would say, the northern star of the IDF's operation. Of course, we're listening very carefully to what the United Nations is saying, and our connections and our channels are open to the international humanitarian organizations on the ground. And I would say, first of all, there is fuel in Gaza Strip that Hamas is hoarding. Hamas is holding on. And I would say Hamas is actually determining the level of the humanitarian crisis by not handing over that fuel to the United Nations and to the international humanitarian organizations operating on the ground.
The UN Secretary General saying overnight that there have been clear violations of humanitarian law in Gaza.
No, I don't accept that. The IDF is operating based on those principles in order to limit civilian casualties, whereas Hamas, on the other hand, when we're calling for people to move from north to south, it is to get people out of harm's way. What Hamas is doing, on the other hand, Kay, is trying to make them stay in the north. Trying to stay in the north in order to put them in harm's way. When we're trying to encourage people to evacuate places we're intending to strike, they're telling and threatening people to stay, and even to an extent where they're positioning checkpoints, physical checkpoints with terrorists with armed terrorists in order to prevent people from getting out of harm's way. This is our operations, and I would say to all of those in the international humanitarian organizations that they need to be on the right side of history. We need to get rid of Hamas. Hamas is the source of all evil. We would not be at war if they hadn't opened this war on the 7th of October against men, women, and children, abducting, murdering, massacring, raping, and beheading. These are the crimes against the people of Israel. These are the crimes against humanity. These are the crimes that justify the removal of Hamas as a governing authority as a government. They utilized all of the tools of government to conduct this attack against us. This is the situation. We need to minimize the influence against the civilians, but this needs to change, and it needs to change now.
Yeah, but I hear you. At what cost, though? Many, many thousands of civilian lives lost so far. That can only increase with a ground invasion.
Okay, it's a devastating situation. The situation cannot remain as it was before the 7th of October, and that needs to change. So the world needs to rally around Israel. The world needs to recognize that Hamas has to go. And indeed, the people of Gaza need to be set free from this terrorist organization, as well as the 222 Israelis being held hostage. We are all being held hostage by this organization. Any slack we give Hamas keeps them in power. They have to go.
A ground invasion increase or decrease the chances of releasing the hostages?
I wouldn't judge it in an increase or decrease. There are ongoing efforts, both operational and civilian or diplomatic, They need to be released as soon as possible. That is the clear comment I have to say on that. Hamas are responsible for their well-being, and the International Committee of the Red Cross have to have access, but ultimately they need to come home now.
As a representative of the Israeli Defense Force, I wonder, going back to the UN Secretary General and his words overnight, Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation, 1,400 murders, referring, of course, to what happened on the 7th of October, didn't happen in a vacuum.
And the question to the IDF would be? Your
reaction to those comments?
You can. I'm the representative of the military. We operate within the realm of international humanitarian law and the laws of armed conflict to defend the state of Israel. The United Nations need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and not maintaining the problem.
Do you feel that with comments like that, they are part of the problem?
Obviously, decent people realize that what happened on 7th of October cannot be allowed to happen ever again. By giving Hamas a free pass, by saying that there is some sort of moral equivalency in the two incidents, is moral bankruptcy. It's giving the hand to terrorism. It is giving this sword of terrorism in the hands of Hamas a free ability to chop our heads off. We won't let that happen.
Lieutenant Colonel, what's your message to the mothers of those Israeli soldiers that are waiting for the word to start the ground incursion?
I would say on a personal note, and I have friends who are mothers to young men and women who will be on the front lines. And I would say, and I tell you what they're saying to us and how we are seeing Israeli society. Myself, as a reservist who was called up on the 7th of October, and the 300,000 reservists, the situation has to change. We are all concerned for our sons and daughters. But we have seen society rally around the need for the change. We understand, everybody in Israel understands. And if I'm sitting on the 8th of October and on the 9th of October, and my wife is saying, are they going to end up where we live? Are they going to come here? Are they going to come into our house? That is the sentiment of most Israelis today. And while war is a devastation of humanity, Israelis realize that we've never endured the magnitude of such a terrible, horrific, brutal attack against us in all of our history since those that are saying since the Holocaust in one day, that is exactly accurate. And that is why Israel feels this is not a war of retribution, but rather a war of our existence, where so many are saying, we can chop off your heads or your hands or cut out the babies from mothers' bellies and just go on. And that is why Israeli society is so very determined that the situation has to change.
Do you have any, before I let you go, Lieutenant Colonel, do you have any words of comfort at all or solace for the mothers in Palestine today?
This is a tragedy on both sides of the fence. And I watch the dramatic images that you are showing, and my heart weeps for all of the civilians that are caught up in this. And indeed, I hope that the people of Gaza will have the peace that they deserve, just as the people of Israel deserve. Unfortunately, it's Hamas that is pulling the strings and has caused so much pain and destruction on both sides of the fence. And our job as the Israel Defense Forces is to restore that security.